The Mary Celeste was not meant to become a legend. She was an American brigantine, strong, reliable, and built for crossing the Atlantic. In November 1872, she set sail from New York City under the steady command of Captain Benjamin Briggs, a devout Christian, a careful sailor, and a family man. His wife Sarah and their young daughter Sophia joined him, along with a hand-picked crew of 7 trusted men. Their mission was straightforward: deliver a cargo of industrial alcohol to Genoa, Italy. Nothing about the voyage suggested anything out of the ordinary. The ship was in good condition, the weather forecasts were reasonable, and everyone on board had every reason to believe they would complete the journey without incident. But somewhere between New York and Genoa, the Mary Celeste disappeared into legend. On December 5, 1872, another ship, the DEI Gracia, was crossing the Atlantic when her crew spotted a vessel adrift. As they drew closer, they saw the name on the hull, Mary Celeste. The ship looked strangely deserted. The sails were still partially set, the ship itself was seaworthy, and from a distance there were no obvious signs of distress. But no crew appeared on deck, no voices called out. No distress flags flew from the mast. Captain David Morehouse, who knew Captain Briggs personally, ordered a boarding party to investigate. When the sailors boarded the Mary Celeste, they were greeted with an eerie sight. The ship was completely deserted. There was no one on board, the lifeboat was missing, suggesting the crew might have abandoned ship. Yet inside, the cabins were neat and orderly. The crew's personal belongings, clothes, jewelry, and even valuables were untouched. There were ample supplies of food and fresh water, enough for 6 months at sea. In the captain's quarters, the ship's logbook was found. The last entry was dated 10 days earlier and recorded a location near the Azores Islands, about 400 miles from where the ship was found. There was no hint of trouble, no mention of sickness, mutiny, bad weather, or any reason to abandon the vessel. The ship itself showed only minor damage. One of the 2 pumps was out of order, and some water had seeped into the hold, but nothing that would justify deserting a perfectly functional ship in the middle of the ocean. Even the cargo, 1,701 barrels of industrial alcohol, was largely intact, though 9 barrels were later found to be empty. The logbook ended abruptly. The charts and navigation instruments were missing, suggesting they had been taken deliberately, but if the crew had abandoned ship willingly, why hadn't they stayed nearby? Why had no one seen or heard from them again? The DEI Gracia crew sailed the Mary Celeste to Gibraltar, where they claimed salvage rights and expected a reward. Instead, they found themselves caught in a swirl of suspicion. Authorities opened a formal investigation. British officials could hardly believe such an event had occurred without foul play. Some speculated that the DEI Gracia crew might have attacked the Mary Celeste and killed its passengers for the reward. Others whispered of a mutiny among Captain Briggs's own men, or pirates attacking the ship and leaving it adrift. Yet no bloodstains were found, no signs of violence, no evidence of struggle. Everything on board suggested a sudden, silent abandonment with no clue why. Newspapers seized the story, and the Mary Celeste became famous almost overnight. It was the perfect maritime mystery, a ghost ship, perfectly intact, with no living soul aboard and no logical explanation. Fiction writers embellished the story, adding sea monsters, spectral attacks, and curses, but the true facts were stranger than any fiction. A ship left completely empty, with meals still laid out, beds neatly made, and a ship's log that simply stopped. The Mary Celeste drifted from sailors' gossip into legend. What terrified people most was not just that the crew had vanished. It was how ordinary everything had seemed just moments before they disappeared. It suggested that disaster could strike not with warning or violence, but in complete silence, leaving behind no trace of what had happened. It tapped into a primal fear, that we could vanish from the world in the blink of an eye, leaving only questions behind. For decades, no answers came, no bodies were ever recovered, no survivors ever surfaced, no conclusive evidence ever explained why Captain Briggs and his crew had abandoned their ship. Only the empty decks of the Mary Celeste remained, a floating mystery under the endless sky, whispering through the waves of an event that had defied reason. And so, the Mary Celeste sailed straight into history, not as a story of heroism or tragedy, but as a puzzle no one could solve. The ghost ship was real. The missing people were real. The terror was real. But the truth remained forever just beyond reach, and the world, desperate for answers, could only guess at the reasons why a ship full of experienced sailors would simply abandon their vessel, leaving it to sail the Atlantic alone. The mystery of the Mary Celeste deepened as the world struggled to explain what could cause an experienced captain and his loyal crew to abandon a perfectly good ship. Without evidence, theories blossomed, and over time, the legend became richer, stranger, and even more terrifying. One of the earliest and most persistent theories was mutiny. Some speculated that the crew, perhaps under the influence of alcohol fumes from the cargo, had turned violent. A fight could have broken out, tensions boiling over in the endless monotony of the open sea. Maybe they murdered Captain Briggs, stole the lifeboat, and fled. Yet when investigators inspected the Mary Celeste, they found no signs of struggle, no blood, no damage to the ship that would suggest a violent uprising. If there had been a mutiny, it had left not a single scratch behind. The theory began to fade, but not entirely. The human mind always searches for drama where mystery lingers. Piracy was another explanation offered at the time. The 19th century Atlantic was not free of pirates, despite romantic ideas of piracy belonging to an earlier age. Could a pirate crew have attacked the Mary Celeste, looted it, and left it drifting? It would explain the absence of crew and lifeboat, yet piracy also made little sense. The ship's valuable cargo, the barrels of industrial alcohol, remained almost completely untouched. So did the crew's belongings, including cash and personal valuables. Pirates, if they had come aboard, would surely have taken what was easy to carry. And there was again no sign of a struggle. No cannon fire, no broken decks, no bullet holes. Piracy seemed unlikely. Then came the theories that leaned away from human action and toward something stranger. One idea suggested that an explosion had occurred. Alcohol is volatile, and it was possible that fumes built up in the hold. A small explosion could have terrified the crew into abandoning ship, believing it was about to blow apart. They could have lowered the lifeboat in panic, drifting away into the vast ocean. But again, when the ship was inspected, there were no scorch marks, no burns, no signs of fire. An explosion large enough to terrify but small enough to leave no evidence seemed highly improbable. Still, it remained one of the less wild theories simply because it didn't demand belief in the supernatural. The more fantastical ideas soon took hold. Some whispered that the Mary Celeste had sailed into a time rift, a crack in the fabric of reality. Maybe the crew had slipped into another dimension, vanished into a parallel world where they walked a version of the Earth forever invisible to us. Others spoke of sea monsters, massive unseen creatures lurking beneath the waves, pulling sailors into the deep without leaving a trace. The late 19th century was still a world filled with dark myths of the ocean, of krakens and leviathans, and for a public hungry for sensation, such stories held an undeniable allure. Still others suggested alien abduction. This theory, though anachronistic, grew more popular in the 20th century when UFOs and extraterrestrial theories flooded pop culture. If aliens could abduct modern humans, why not sailors in 1872? It was the least grounded explanation, but it persisted in the realm of possibility for those willing to believe that the Mary Celeste crossed paths with something beyond human understanding. There were even weirder suggestions: poisonous seaweed releasing toxic gases, a vengeful ghost ship attacking its own crew, mysterious magnetic fields causing madness and disorientation. Each theory tried to answer the same question: why abandon a seaworthy ship without a fight? But the most accepted modern theory points towards something more mundane, yet no less chilling. Some historians believe that the Mary Celeste's water pumps were malfunctioning, leading Captain Briggs to fear that the ship was taking on more water than it really was. Combined with rough weather near the Azores, it's possible Briggs ordered the crew into the lifeboat temporarily, planning to stay close to the Mary Celeste until it was safe to return. A rope tied from the lifeboat to the ship could have been their lifeline. But if the rope snapped, or came untied, the lifeboat would have quickly drifted out of reach, leaving the desperate crew adrift in the vast Atlantic as they watched their ship, their only hope, sail away without them. It's a horrifying but plausible scenario. No mutiny, no pirates, no sea monsters, just a series of tragic human mistakes compounded by bad luck and the relentless forces of the sea. A simple, small decision made under pressure could have doomed them all. Despite all these theories, no definitive proof has ever been found. No wreckage from a lost lifeboat washed ashore, no bodies were ever recovered, no last messages scribbled in desperation floated in on the tides. The Mary Celeste remains what it was found as, a ship intact but abandoned, frozen in a moment of mystery. As time passed, the Mary Celeste's reputation grew. Writers spun more dramatic versions of her story. Fictional accounts added wild storms, bloodstains, sword fights, and supernatural forces, but the real Mary Celeste needs no embellishment. She remains one of the greatest unsolved mysteries in maritime history, a silent reminder that the ocean still keeps its deepest secrets. And as her legend grew, so too did the human need to explain the unexplainable. What happened on the Mary Celeste? We may never know, but that very absence of answers is what keeps her drifting forever, not just on the ocean, but through time, imagination, and the endless tides of human curiosity. The Mary Celeste never found peace. Even after years of investigations, inquiries, and countless theories, she remained adrift not only in the Atlantic, but in the minds of everyone who heard her story. Once salvaged and returned to service, the ship carried a shadow on every voyage. Sailors whispered that she was cursed. Owners changed hands. Captains came and went. She was wrecked deliberately off the coast of Haiti in 1885 in an attempt at insurance fraud, her final end as undignified and murky as her legend. But her real legacy wasn't the wood or the sails. It was the silence she left behind, the chilling sense that something could happen without warning, without violence, without a trace. The mystery of the Mary Celeste endures because it taps into something deeper than curiosity. It touches fear. It's the fear of the unknown, the fear of helplessness, the fear that even the most ordinary journey could spiral into a void from which there is no return. Captain Briggs was a man of faith, of discipline, of family. His crew were men of experience and the sea, and yet they vanished just the same. Their knowledge, their prayers, their skills, none of it saved them from disappearing into nothingness. Why do we still talk about the Mary Celeste after 150 years? Because unsolved mysteries leave a hole that the human mind cannot ignore. Every version of the story, every pirate, every rogue wave, every sea monster, is not just an attempt to entertain. It's an attempt to fill that hole, to close a door that, deep down, we know will always remain open. Because the truth may be more terrifying than any ghost story. The truth may simply be that sometimes, things happen without reason, without fairness, and without a neat ending. Modern researchers have done their best to strip away the myths. They've looked at meteorological data, reconstructed possible sea routes, tested the effects of alcohol fumes, and explored every rational angle. Some have even pointed out that 9 empty barrels in the cargo hold were made of porous red oak, which might have caused vapor to build up, leading to fears of explosion. Others suggest that waterlogged readings from the ship's broken pump could have convinced Briggs that the Mary Celeste was sinking, even if she wasn't. But all of these ideas, as logical and scientific as they seem, still remain guesses. Educated guesses, but guesses all the same. Because the Mary Celeste left behind no witnesses, no final messages, no black box recorder, only a derelict ship, intact yet abandoned, floating aimlessly on the Atlantic waves, as if time itself had forgotten her. And maybe that's why her story holds us captive. Because deep down, we understand that no matter how much technology we invent, no matter how much science we uncover, there will always be mysteries that remain forever just beyond our grasp. Mysteries that remind us we are small, that we are fragile, that the ocean and life itself will always have secrets we cannot explain. The Mary Celeste has become more than a ship. She is a symbol, a warning, a ghost, not of spirits but of questions we cannot answer. And as long as ships sail, as long as people dare to cross the wild oceans, her legend will continue to sail with them, silent, watching, waiting for the next disappearance, the next vanishing, the next moment when logic breaks down and mystery takes its place. If this story left you staring into the waves of the unknown, hit that like button. If the fate of the Mary Celeste chills you even now, comment ghost ship below and tell me your theory. Was it panic, piracy, or something even stranger? And if you crave more real mysteries, hidden legends, and true stories that history tried to bury, subscribe to SB Tells.